From the California State Senate, this is Senate Spotlight.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Senate Spotlight, where we discuss legislative priorities, policy, and other related issues with members of the California State Senate. From the state capitol here in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green, and joining us for this segment of Senate Spotlight is our guest, State Senator Ricardo Lara from the 33rd Senate District, representing Southeast LA. Welcome, sir. Glad to have you. You're also chair of the legislature's Latino caucus. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with this big 2013 grand question. Obviously, coming from the Assembly and now to the Senate, 2013, time of tremendous opportunity, a time of tremendous challenge, and the face of California is changing, as is the face of the legislature. What does that mean for governing here in California and for the people whom you govern?
Well, I think it gives us a really unique opportunity to really delve into those issues that are unique to certain communities in California. The fact is that California is one of the most diverse states in our union, and so that leads to some challenges, but also some great opportunities to engage people civically and engage them in the political process, which for the most part they haven't been so.
And obviously, this is a tremendous opportunity and time of change, and you've seen how it's changed dramatically for Latinos here in California. And as chair of the Latino caucus, not just for Latinos, but for all persons of color. And you've seen the arc. Obviously, you saw last year's elections and the resounding message that was sent by Latinos and other persons of color to the president, to the state and federal government. The voice is stronger, obviously an overwhelming voice, and you folks now better positioned to help your communities, I assume, right?
Absolutely. I could tell you I'm so proud of the Latino community stepping up and voting and participating in our electoral process. I think the message was loud and clear. We are here, we're Americans, we want to participate, and now it's time to really work on those issues that are unique to our community.
Unique to your community, but also Latino issues are California's issues, and vice versa.
Absolutely. When you talk to a Latino family, they care about the same issues that any American care about: good jobs, education, healthcare. And so, that gives us a great opportunity to involve more folks in the process and talk about those issues that are critical for us here in California.
One of the issues that's critical, not just here in California, but also nationwide, again, we go back to the resounding message sent by Latino voters to the president, are issues of immigration, and the federal government still trying to sort that out on the national level. Obviously, the president's getting that message, and he had the DACA executive order last year regarding documents. But what's happening now at the national level? Is the message being received by the president and the federal government?
Absolutely. I think you've seen the tone change and the rhetoric change regarding the issue of immigration in our federal level. Republicans are talking about it, Democrats are talking about it. Our president is now talking about this important issue in our community. And so I think we've really seen a paradigm shift in the way we talk about immigration now and immigrants in general. We're no longer vilifying them, but we're trying to figure out how do we identify strategies to incorporate our immigrant population into the state and ensure that they can be productive members of our society and they can contribute at a more rapid pace to our economy and our society.
You mentioned Republicans. Obviously, Republicans now are coming to the table with this issue a little more than they had, Senator Marco Rubio and others. But one of the things they're asking for, in addition to addressing the needs of the undocumented immigrants that are already here and finding further pathways to immigration, they're also attaching a lot of issues here to border safety and to other security for the country. Is this part of the discussion? Should it be? I mean, you are going to have to deal with both sides of the table on a federal and state level as you deal with this.
Absolutely. In California, having to share a border with our neighbors to the south, we absolutely have to have a conversation about border security, border safety, and ensuring that obviously that is being held to its highest standard, and then ensure that people that live around the border region are safe, but also folks that live in the border region. I can tell you from personal experience, having my sister live in Tijuana and my nephews come to school in San Diego, it is such a unique region where people really talk about the economy in a more regional approach. A job created in San Diego creates a job in Tijuana, and vice versa. A job created in Tijuana creates a job in San Diego. And so that's such a unique community. I think we have to engage that community if we're going to really have these serious discussions about border safety, security, without impeding our local economies and ensuring that both Mexico and California continue to prosper.
And as part of the discussion in California, you are proposing legislation that would bring the issues dealing with immigration into the state policy role and into the state department role, creating a role for advocating and promoting and centralizing the process of immigration for Californians. Tell us about SB 23, this Office of the New American. Sounds fascinating.
So, I got this idea while I was at the Democratic Convention in North Carolina, in which delegates were being instructed, how do we talk about immigrants and talk about our new American immigrants? It just happens to be that this new wave of new American immigrants happen to be Latino and our API community. And so instead of being one of those states that pushes our immigrants away, that kind of vilifies them, I thought, it's time for California to embrace our immigrants. And we have in the past. I mean, we've been at the forefront of landmark legislation to ensure that our immigrant children have in-state tuition, that now the DACA students have driver's license. And so as we continue to see how we can integrate our new American immigrants quicker, how do we get them a job? How do we get their kids in school? How do we get them to buy a home? How do we get them incorporating our society quickly so that they can not only contribute to our economy, but helps continue to strengthen our state?
And other states are doing this already, right? So you have a template, if you will, to look at for this.
Right. There's several states that are looking into several initiatives, and I think it's time for California to lead on this issue once again and prove that, instead of pushing our immigrants away, we're inviting them to be active part of our society, get them out of the shadows, because we know they exist, we know where they work, and it's important for them to get incorporated into society quickly so that they can contribute at a greater level.
And you're going to obviously place this under the jurisdiction of some state agency. I know you're probably still trying to work out the
We're still working out the kinks. We're working with the governor's office, and the governor's office has indicated that he himself wants to now start researching new policies that help incorporate our immigrant population, and so I'm excited to work with him.
Are you concerned about the concerns that others will have about, oh my gosh, you're just creating another level of bureaucracy? Can California government, who sometimes in the perspective of some Californians seems to have enough trouble handling what it already has on its plate, handle this with another new agency, another new department in an agency?
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, as a former chair of the Joint Legislative Audit Committee, the last thing I want is to create more bureaucracy that's going to cost money, and so we're working out those kinks. I want to make sure if we can incorporate it into an existing department, or if that we can, house it within the governor's office and make sure that it becomes part of the governor's mandate, then we'll do that. But the last thing I want to do is to waste taxpayers' money. I want to make sure at the end of the day that we get these new American immigrants incorporated quickly so that we can actually increase our budget.
You mentioned driver's licenses. I know for at least a decade, it seems like a generation, California and its legislators have been struggling with this issue of driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. It seems now, here in 2013, now is the time that politics and attitude is sort of stepping aside. Looks like this could be the opportunity to pull this together.
I absolutely agree with you, Brett. I think the time is now. I think the rhetoric is changing. And, like in everything else, these are difficult policies to talk about, and it takes time. And so I think the time is ripe now. I think now with this new electorate, I think now with these new attitudes from both parties, I think we could finally get this driver's license bill signed, and most importantly, have drivers on our roads that are educated, that have the training, to have the training to actually be, driving safely on our roads, which the DMV continues to say that this is a major problem for us, is that some of the drivers that are on the road do not know the rules and are not driving safe. So this is a big issue for us, and I think I'm very hopeful that the governor will sign that bill this year.
Well, you're right. It is a big issue. It's still a concern for a lot of people who say this would be gateway identification, that it opens up the doors for fraud and other abuses. So you still have to address that concern.
Absolutely. I mean, we're working out all those details, but I think now the governor has indicated, the electorate has indicated it's time to incorporate these folks into our society, and so we're going to work to do that.
Let's move forward, talk about the 2013-2014 state budget. Obviously, the Latino caucus is going to be a major player in this conversation, too. The budget introduced a couple of weeks ago, and for the first time in years, the state sort of has reached a point where expenditures and revenues are roughly in balance. And this, of course, creates more opportunity for school students, for their families, for higher ed. Give me your reaction from that, from the legislator's perspective and the Latino caucus perspective.
Well, the initial reaction is one, I'm very content with the fact that we're no longer decimating our public schools, and that we're reinvesting in our higher education system, our K through 12 education system. And so it's been, a long time coming, but it could not happen without Prop 30 and the will of the voters. And so we have to tread very carefully and ensure that we don't raise tuition in our public universities. We can no longer price out students that want to seek a college education. And so the voters have entrusted us by supporting Prop 30. We have to tread very carefully and act very judiciously to ensure that we reinvest in the education system, which we know is going to ultimately help us and create that workforce that we need for the future and in our new global economy.
You have focused in on the local funding, local control funding formulas where the students' diverse needs are addressed at the local level by the districts and the local governments that apparently know them best. Is this the best approach to dealing with some of the needs of the students?
I think so. I've talked to numerous administrators throughout the various school districts in my district, and they say, let us handle. We are at the forefront. We are the ones administering these programs. We understand our school population, and I think it's time that we entrust these resources to the folks that are actually teaching, who are administrating our schools. I also like the governor's approach of the student-weighted formula to ensure that those schools that are already starting at a disadvantage get the money they need to keep them at par with some school districts that might be more wealthy or might have the resources they need to ensure that those kids get the resources to succeed. And so I think it is a good approach. I think we're finally going to have an equal balance approach into how we fund our poorer schools as opposed to our schools that are more wealthy.
And I know ESL students are affected by this. There's a challenge with them as well, and sometimes being held back, not being put into the mainstream, if you will, because schools are getting the money for keeping them in these classes.
Right. I mean, it continues to be a problem that eludes us. English language learners need that extra help. They need, most importantly, the instructional materials to allow them to gain the proficiency in English. And so I'm glad that the governor is focused on identifying particularly this population, which, here in California, the majority of the English language learners in the country we have here in California. So it's a big group of students that we need to ensure continue to succeed if we're to succeed as a state.
And this is succeeding for all these students, and I want to focus on that. I know that you are working to help students that have been labeled as truant or underperforming, and not only students with learning disabilities or with other issues, but even students that get labeled, LGBT, whatever it might be. Tell me about some of the efforts that you're doing to make sure that these students don't get caught in the abyss and stuck in the cracks, and that their individual issues and opportunities are looked at and they move forward with everybody else.
Well, study after study has told us that if you kick a student out of school, per se, that student is now going to be at a greater disadvantage to come back. And so what we want to revise our policies for dismissal, for truancy, and ensure that instead of, taking the kid out of the classroom, that we incorporate them and get to the root of the problem. What is going on? Some of the times these students have problems at home. They might have some sort of learning disability that we are not addressing. And by simply kicking them out of school is not a solution. We have to do a better job of identifying what the source of the problem is, get them the help they need, and get them incorporated into their school again so that they become productive citizens. One thing that we're working on and we're waiting on this year is an audit to all the anti-bullying laws that have been done over the past 10 years. So instead of doing another anti-bullying law, I thought it would be a good idea to actually audit what we have on the books and see what's working and what isn't, because we clearly are still hearing stories of children being bullied, children being harassed at school, and nobody wants that for their child. Everybody wants to ensure that each kid has a safe learning environment, and so we want to make sure we deliver that, but we have to address the laws that we have now and see what's working and what isn't.
On the university level, is the DREAM Act working? I know the mandates are just now coming into play here, but this is a tremendous opportunity for college students here in California. Do we see that being a positive thing here?
Absolutely. Time and time again, I can tell you, I run into several of these students. I get emails, I get letters of students now that are at UCLA, USC, Berkeley, Stanford, and are doing excellent. And what we've always said, what we have always said since the implementation of AB 540, which was a bill to allow undocumented students to pay in-state tuition in 2001, we've seen that these are the best and the brightest students across our state. These were valedictorians, captains of the football team, volleyball team, you name it. So these were students that are already succeeding, have played by the rules, have done everything we've asked them to do, and they were, they couldn't move to that next step because they were undocumented. So now we see the proof that these kids are succeeding at some of our best universities and that they're doing very well. And they're going to stay in California and now have an opportunity to fully contribute to our economy.
One of the things, just as a final thought here before we wrap up, one of the unique opportunities, obviously every legislator represents their constituents, but one of the, I will even say, unique parts here is that you can come to your constituents and really say, I am one of you. I am from East LA. My family has been here. I know the challenges. I know the opportunities. Speak to that just briefly. What a unique position this puts you in as a legislator.
Well, this is, to me, the greatest job in the world. Being able to advocate on behalf of working families and my constituents in the 33rd Senate District, and to let them know that dreams do happen. This is a dream come true for me. I have, given my entire life to public service, and now to be able to get to this level, and I'm just like my constituents. You'll see me at the same grocery stores. You'll see me with the same mechanic that everybody goes to. And like I always tell the students that I meet with, only in this great country can the son of a seamstress and a factory worker from East LA now get to serve in the 8th largest economy in the world. And to me, that is a blessing to be able to have that opportunity. And that only happens in this great country.
You're very positive about this, and this is a wonderful way to look at it as we come into 2013. Is the tide turning? Are the opportunities greater? Are we going to look back on this time as a time of the real change?
I think so. I think we're poised for greatness. I think we are now reversing those horrible trends of the past, and you're going to see your legislature being much more judicious with our money, being able to build our coffers and to save for that rainy day that we haven't done in the past. And so we got to just make sure that we're ready to meet the challenges of the future. And that doesn't happen if we don't continue investing in our education system.
Great. Thank you for coming and joining us. Hope we can bring you
you
back to talk a little more into the weeds about some of these other issues as the debate and the policy and the elements of the bills come to reality. So
Would love to.
Thank you, Senator Lara. Appreciate your time. Our guest has been State Senator Ricardo Lara, representing the 33rd Senate District in Southeast Los Angeles. And that wraps it up for this edition of Senate Spotlight. We invite you to join us next time as we discuss important legislative issues and policy with the newsmakers and newsbreakers of the California State Senate. From the state capitol in Sacramento, I'm Brian Green. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Senate Spotlight.